Retired Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, he's Senior Fellow for Defense Priorities and a former U.S. advisor to the South Korean Army. So setting aside sort of the diplomacy that the president was working on, what about this hard power issue? How do you see it?
Well, I think that in terms of this suspension of the military drills, I don't view that at all as a concession, as some are calling it. I think it's actually a calculated risk by the president, because it actually costs us nothing to do, because it doesn't diminish our military capability or readiness in the least in the short term, because there's nothing that's going to stop our forces from training, as your correspondent there just mentioned, or the South Korean forces. So it could, however, play the path for lowering the tensions continually and moving towards denuclearization. So this could be a very good play by the president.
I know that if there's a saying in America, if you want peace, prepare for war. So just to put a finer point on this, apparently the BBC had a report that, this is the tweet, let me just read it to you. Chinese Foreign Ministry announced that Trump would suspend U.S. war games with South Korea before Trump announced it himself at the press briefing. That suggests Kim's people were on the phone to Beijing straight after the meeting because they recognized how big a concession it was. But that's interesting for me. I think you're the first person I've heard explain that it actually is not as big a concession as some people might worry.
Well, it's not. And the reason I say that is because our strategic capabilities and our tactical capabilities are unchanged. And I think President Trump is very well aware of that. And anything that's suspended can be unsuspended in a day. And, you know, our military is still on the ground. Our Air Force is still powerful. Our Pacific Fleet is still very much capable of doing things everywhere. So we have given up nothing. But if it gives us the opportunity to move towards denuclearization, that's a really good play.
What also, tell me a little bit about cyber warfare, because I know that the North Koreans in particular have been very adept at causing lots of problems all around the world. But the cyber warfare issue and our preparedness in that area.
Yeah, and that is a very critical issue for us to take care of, and one that I've been advocating for quite a long time, because you can have a great military, but if you're not protected from cyber intrusion, it can limit your ability to operate in any realm. And we do know that North Korea has been engaged in quite a lot of that, and we should expect that. But our countermeasures, I think, are starting to improve. And it's constantly evolving. So it's something we need to put a lot of emphasis on, but I feel pretty confident in our abilities right now.
What do you think that the North Korean military, to the extent that they saw any coverage of the summit, that they're thinking now, as they are obviously working for somebody who is a dictator and who has treated the citizens of that country terribly, but they're extremely loyal to him? Are there any cracks in the armor with his military?
I don't think we see any cracks in the armor, at least not on any large scale up to this point. Although, you know, this sacking of these three senior generals could be an indication of that, depending on what the inside reason for all of it was. But we do have quite a bit of reporting that that the military, which has been prioritized in the resources that they've gotten for decades now, has not been fed as well as we had hoped, as well as they had wanted, rather. And you got to think that when they're hearing about the possibility of lowered tensions, that's probably going to make them happy. Indeed.
Let me just, well, and I have about a minute left with you. Just since 1955, after the Korean War, you know, it started then. Currently, we have 23,000 U.S. forces in South Korea. That's ground, air, naval, special ops. And I just wonder if you have a word or some thoughts about all of the people, all of the Americans who have served in that area since 1955.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we were placed there at a time when South Korea could not defend itself, and they utterly relied on us. I was one of those. I served there in the 90s, and everybody who's been there is part of, you know, defending our treasured ally in South Korea, and I think they can be proud of what's coming in now. And if we can ever get to the point to where peace can actually be achieved, it would be a great accomplishment, and everybody would feel, you know, like they had a real part in making that happen.
Well, Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, thank you for being here today.
Thank you.